Well, I'm going to welcome you here. Thanks a lot for coming. You're following up on a great event that you had a couple weeks back in Michigan City with the South Shore Line, and it seemed like an awesome opportunity to invite you here, hear a little bit more about your story, a little bit about your district, a little bit about Indiana political management, but maybe just start with who's Scott? For any of our viewers that may not know you as well as you'd like, who is?
That's one of those old Merv Griffin kind of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm always uncomfortable talking about myself, but given that it needs a serious response,
I'll give. They want to know.
I was born in Michigan City in 1970, right at St. Anthony Hospital.
Okay.
When my parents brought me home, they lived in what we now call a manufactured housing park. We used to call them trailer parks. And when it was about my dad was a teacher. They both worked in the school system at the time. My dad bought a house in the lakefront neighborhood for $16,000 back in those days. Yeah, that's back before anybody lived out there. And I grew up pretty close to Lake Michigan, just inside the city limits of Michigan City. I went to Long Beach Elementary School. Not far from where Chief Justice of the United States John Roberts grew up.
Okay.
And then I went all through Michigan City area schools when I was a kid and played baseball and loved doing that. Played guitar, took up an interest in guitar. That was important to me when I was young and still
you keep
is.
that going?
Still is. Oh yeah, I still do that almost every day. But anyways, I've just always loved where I grew up, and I especially loved the lakefront. Be around the lake. And because my dad, he got a little more comfortable financially over the years. He saved a little bit of money. We had a boat, and we'd spend a lot of time out on the water. But that was my home. And then when I grew up, I went away from home for the first time. Went to Indiana University, and was
daughter that's going down there in a couple months.
And my daughter's just finished her freshman year down there right now, but. In any case, I never had any idea that I would end up working in government. I always had an interest in politics and would talk about it and voice opinions and run for maybe a class office or things like that. But I got a degree in public affairs, and I ended up right after college. I went to work for our local member of Congress, who was Tim Romer from South Bend at the time. And my period of public service sort of began from there. Yeah.
And what is it, I always ask this of folks, what is it that compels you to invest yourself in public service? Because to me, it would seem like root canal. It would seem that the upside and the benefits of doing it are so modest compared to the challenges of every Tom, Dick, and Harry has got to tell you that you're crazy and your opinion's wrong. What compels you to put yourself out there?
It's just service. And by the way, you don't always realize that right in the beginning, that it's just service. But after a while, it starts to dawn on you that that's pretty much what the deal is. And like I said, I always had an interest in government, and I always had an interest in how decisions get made. And I always had an interest in the way people can have different opinions on things and still look for ways to accomplish stuff. And I used to, study the presidents and draw lessons from them. But I didn't have any idea of how to practically apply that. I knew people ran for office, and I knew that was tough to do. But a lot of governing involves people that are not in elected office. It's all the staff people and
all the machinery that actually makes it all work.
Yeah, all the machinery of it that makes it all work. And I really didn't have any concept that I ended up doing that. But when I was in college, I had my favorite professor was a guy from Bloomington named Carl Olesker, and he's since passed on, but I just remember him vividly. And I would sit in his class, and I would hear about his own political history, having run for Congress and lost, and then being a legislative director for then Senators Vance Hartke and Birch Bayh, who were Indiana's U.S. Senators at the time. And I learned about all these people who worked on Capitol Hill, who were part of these big decisions. My senior year, spring break came up, and everyone else was headed down to Florida. And it occurred to me, you know what, maybe you ought to figure out what you're going to do after school here. And I actually went out to Washington, D.C. and went on to Capitol Hill and looked for an internship where I would work for no money and just sort of learn how people did things and how they served constituents and did the job of casting votes. And
so you went to D.C. versus
I went to D.C.
South Beach
and I walked into my hometown congressman's office, and he said, "Why don't you come out and work with us for this summer and just learn, answer phones, draft letters that we're going to tear apart." Talk to constituents and understand what they're talking about, and let us know what they told you. And that's what I did. And I just realized that I'd accidentally found the right thing for me to be doing. It. But I was, and by the way, I was. This is my 19th year, and I just finished it in the Indiana House of Representatives. But before that, I was a staff member for a member of Congress, and that's where I really got my experience on how do you listen to people, what are they interested in, and what do you need to do to help them and improve their lives.
Yeah.
And suddenly there was one day that there was going to be a vacancy for the local state representative in Michigan City. It never even crossed my mind that I should run for it. And a couple of people that I knew from working on the congressional staff called me up and said, "Hey, why don't you run for that thing?" I said, "Well, okay, well maybe I should." It just dawned on me that maybe that was the right thing to do. I wasn't even looking to do it, but the opportunity was presented, and it instantly seemed like something that made sense. And I, went through that first grueling campaign and was victorious. And I was a Democrat, and Michigan City leans Democrat in most elections, and it's a good year, and I've had the opportunity to serve ever since. That was back in 1998, and I'm just forever grateful that I've had the opportunity to do something that to me is so meaningful, and I've had the chance to make a difference. By the way, a small difference in some people's lives.
Well, and I think the difference is beginning to be seen in every single aspect for Michigan City, not just from what you're doing, but literally from what the whole city is doing. Tell me a little bit about growing up in Michigan City and now you see where Michigan City's going, because they've got a lot from the lakefront to the downtown district to what's happening with the new hospital to what's going to happen with the South Shoreline. There's a lot of pieces that are coming together.
Michigan City has some just amazing core attributes. Yeah, the first one is the lakefront. Okay, in your access to it. I mean, you got a beautiful beach. You've got some sort of historic structures near there, and you just have one of the most beautiful bodies of water in the world, which, by the way, looks different every single day.
Yeah.
It's subtly different. I mean, every day I look at the lake and it's something new.
Well, so I know just from watching it all on Facebook every single day, the number of people that are out there taking a photograph of that.
That's what I'm doing.
City Lighthouse, and you're like, my God, that one's beautiful. No, that one is really. And then the next day, you're like, oh my God, that one's even better.
And so that is a great attribute. Now the other attributes have to do with its people. One thing that I brag on, when I'm down in Indianapolis and you have people from all over Indiana serving, people ask me about my town, and I always say one of the things I'm proudest of is I have, I've got 4 Catholic churches and a synagogue and a mosque, plus all the other churches. I'm very proud of that. It's a very diverse community. Okay, in terms of people's backgrounds, how they became Americans over the years. That's something that's very important to me. I think is a strength of the area. And the next thing is just the industriousness of the people there. There's a very working class, old industrial, we have to get to work attitude.
Just drop it on, get it done.
Like that too. Now that gets into some challenges we've had. Those old, the Pullman plant and a lot of the old medium-sized industry that sort of sustained the middle class in Michigan City. They've moved for a lot of different reasons. Some of it's automation. Some of it is moving for different labor markets. I mean, that probably takes a different show in and of itself. But that's also one of the things that I've wanted to play a role in trying to rejuvenate, because I've always wanted to, you have to have economic opportunity in order to preserve what you love best about the fundamental nature of your community. And that's where some of the hard work starts.
Seems like there's a lot of cylinders hitting at the same time, though, for the city. So growing up there is probably heartening to see, you know what, this is coming together, that's coming together. Like, I can really actually see sort of city on the rise kind of thing.
That's right. That's how I feel about it. And by the way, we've taken it on the chin in a lot of ways, like anybody else has. You know, we've had our ups and downs, but you know, those basic conditions for having a great place to live have never left. Sometimes we've needed to put them together better, or focus on them better, or really acknowledge them more.
Yeah.
But they're there.
Tell me a little bit about governing in the state of Indiana. Rumor has it that there's some bipartisan things happening, and there's actually people getting along down there.
Well, certainly more so than in Washington, D.C., and certainly more than what you'd see on TV. Now, bear in mind, we argue about plenty of stuff. We disagree about a lot of things. You know why? We're supposed to. Okay, the people don't agree. So, and we reflect them. So there's going to be disagreements and different ideas about directions we should take. However, while you have to do all those things, because that's the way the system manifests itself, because you've got to express the will of the people in finality at some point. That's certainly not all of it, or even close to a majority of it. Most of it is just a lot of things that need to be done. And a lot of it is things that people generally agree on that you can do. And I've always tried to say what differentiates government in Indianapolis and government that maybe you see in Washington, D.C. We disagree and we have our arguments, we have our battles, but we are able to accomplish the things that we do agree on. You know, it seems like in Washington they can't even accomplish the things that have broad agreement. That's where you have a problem. We still have a workable system where people can reach across the aisle when it's of mutual interest, and not set aside core convictions, but set aside some reservations that they might have in order to make improvements. You know, we just saw that with the South Shore Railroad. One that maybe you've talked about in here, I don't know, it's perfect, but addressing this lead situation over in East Chicago. Yeah. That really brought a lot of people together, and people that weren't accustomed to working together all the time. So it's good that we can function when it's necessary. Now, do we have differing ideas about how to make Indiana the best state that we, believe it's capable of being? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you'll do that all day long.
But that's okay. And every couple of years, you get to make a mid-course correction, and people get to decide if they're on the right track or not. But that doesn't mean that we're not able to have functioning, and not just functioning, but positive relationships, regardless of party affiliation when it is appropriate.
That South Shore event, again, just recently out there in Michigan City, to me, that was probably among the largest coalition of both ends of government, and not just Republican and Democratic administrations, but people across 4 different counties, across multiple cities. That was a rare confluence of people coming together that said, okay, let's all get on this.
There were two levels where things really came together. First, that issue was really void of any partisan rancor. I mean, I didn't know Eric Holcomb very well before he was elected governor. But I got to know him, and right off the bat I realized that somebody you can go talk to about a practical problem and get a reasonable response.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not going to bug him about Democrat and Republican stuff. We'll have our things to disagree on. But on things like that, when you have just a matter that needs a realistic solution, I instantly felt like that was somebody that I could work with. And his interest and leadership in wanting to see that project become a reality was extraordinarily helpful. And especially became helpful because not only did he have to get all the lawmakers from the region to work together, he had to get the local units of government to make decisions too. Well, that usually is the harder part, and that doesn't mean that there isn't a willingness to work together, but they have their own constituents that they answer to, and not everything lines up. So
you get all those different counties.
So it wasn't just the usual political kinds of things. It was also the parochialism that is natural sometimes between different areas and different governmental units. People were willing to set that aside too. Like I said, were there some reservations? Yes, but reservations are different than bitter end objections.
Yes.
Okay, so just last night the LaPorte County Council voted unanimously in order to make the appropriations for its share of the South Shore project. I'm just knowing all the years that I've served and the different battles and debates I've seen. That's a major accomplishment for those folks in and of itself. So when I said it was one of the most gratifying things I ever had a chance to work on, I meant it, because it's not very often that so many disparate groups can come together for such commonality of purpose. And it's heartening to me to know that it's things like that remain within the realm of the possible.
And probably the even more probable if you can settle down the rancor a little bit and have people say, oh, that actually worked pretty well. Maybe we could do another thing together.
Actually, but outstanding point. Because I represent part of Porter County too, so I had a chance to work with Bill Hanna, who heads up the Regional Development Authority, and Bill does a good job, and that authority serves a very valid purpose and has done some good things. But you take some of the counties outside the RDA, LaPorte County, St. Joe County, they're not sure. It's not the event that they're used to being, part of.
Yeah.
So again, there's some leap of faith required in those folks that everyone was going to work together, and they did. And I said to somebody like Bill and some other folks, I said, you do one big regional project that is even broader than it ordinarily might be, that opens people's minds to other things that they might be willing to do in the future. Sometimes it's too big to say it's about trust. People can learn to trust each other. Sometimes they just don't have the experience working together.
Yeah.
Just the experience in how people work and what they care about. If you're not exposed to it, you can't know. And sometimes you might worry about the things you can't know. But once you know it, it becomes, it doesn't necessarily become easier, but it becomes simpler.
And I think it becomes almost maybe part of a pattern, and people end up repeating a pattern.
Yeah. That's why I said, look, one good big regional project, and then they'll say, well, maybe we can do another one here coming up. And
what is it from your standpoint that drives that as such a transformational project? I know from my own thinking.
Yeah, I know you worked in the financial market, so I'm maybe going to speak in economic terms a little bit. It's about reducing the cost of time.
That's it.
That's it. You reduce the cost of time, and you have all sorts of other economic opportunities, and you have your opportunity costs are reduced. Because I think before that we were doing a little quick math. Before you talk from Michigan City to Millennium Park, you knock a half hour off that trip either way. That's an hour a day over a work week. That's 5 hours. That's more than half a work day.
And there's a whole bunch of those people that are living in or that are working in the city that don't even consider it unless that's a reasonable time frame.
And actually, one of the things I liked about the success of the South Shore, and by the way, with Congressman Visclosky's leadership over many years, Pete for a long time has been saying, guys, come on, let's get this thing together here, because he's been working at the federal level to make the project happen. But when you eliminate those opportunity costs, you make it easier for people to live here, and that's a real intangible economic development.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, that's a key. Economic development is people. It's people and their skills and their ability to innovate. So you have more people living here and able to live here. Just look at the things it does. All of a sudden, more people want to buy your house.
Yeah.
You got more market value on the thing. You got more equity in it. You had a vacant house over here, and all of a sudden you have neighbors.
Yep.
Who are looking out after you.
Those people are paying taxes, and those taxes are getting invested in your schools, and you're improving your infrastructure.
That's exactly right. And maybe you have. I think about this because I work sort of in the healthcare domain, my real job. Maybe you have a few more physicians in the area that you can go to. Now, these things sound very esoteric, but they've got a real practical outcome. You increase your number of people living here, your human resources, increasing the value of our assets, and all of a sudden you start to see people bring parts of their business over with them. Okay, maybe they want to locate something a little closer to where their house is. So over time, you have more job opportunities, more wages. By the way, more opportunity to get the jobs elsewhere and come back and lay your head down here and bring your money home. And maybe you're gonna spend your disposable income at Lowe's here instead of Lowe's over in Naperville.
Yep.
Okay, so then people are able to use their disposable income to spend and create jobs and opportunities for each other. And I just don't see any downside for regional economic growth. Now, do we have to capitalize on it? You bet you.
Yeah.
And do we have to make other good decisions? Yes. But it just expands our potential just, logarithmically.
When you look ahead, let's say the next 6 months or so, the rest of the year, what does Indiana have on the horizon? What are you excited to be working on? Whether it's something going into next year or whether it's something that you still think will come to fruition this year?
Well, I maybe need to be a little. I'm going to talk a little philosophically here, rather than drill down on a specific thing, because we still have about 9 months or so sort of reduce our ideas down to sort of tangible legislation. But Indiana has a few strides that it has to make. So we're talking about a lot of positive things here, but I think part of being positive is also thinking about the work you still need to do.
Being realistic.
Being realistic. We have a couple limitations on our economic potential here in the state, and the main one is the skills of our workforce. People need skills in a changing economy, ones that's changing every single day, and they have to be able to afford to get those skills. Because it's not just that simple. You can't just say, well, somebody was working at a factory for 25 years and here now go repair this telecommunications equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't work like that. Okay, people have to retool, and we have to help them do that, because we need workers, not just workers for a day, but we have to be able to anticipate what the economy is going to look like in the future and prepare people for that. The other thing that's a limitation on our infrastructure is always a limitation, but we spent some time discussing that. But the third thing is our health care of our citizens, because you have to have the skills, but you also have to have the physical ability to do the work. And I just know from my private sector job that healthy employees are productive employees. And they earn people more money, and they earn themselves more money. So I think that's the.
And if they're not, there's a correspondingly even larger negative impact if they're not healthy.
And so, some of Indiana's broader healthcare indicators aren't strong.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean we just on average we weigh more than we should. We smoke probably more than we should. We do a lot of other things more than we should. But also it's about people having the ability to get well when they have the desire to get well. So I think if we're able to prove those things, there's no telling what Indiana's capable of. There's no telling what our region's capable of. Certainly, it'd be the kind of place that our kids and grandkids want to stay.
Well, and that's ultimately what you want them to do.
That is what we. By the way, that's the goal. That's the goal. We live a good life, and our kids and grandkids stay here and live a good life too, close to us. That has intrinsic value. You can't assign a dollar value to it, but that is the goal.
So let's say you're out this weekend in Michigan City, and you just want to go out and enjoy the area around it. Where are you going to go?
Oh, that's an easy one for me. I'm lucky. I've lived in the vicinity of Lake Michigan most of my life, and I walk the short distance down to Lakeshore Drive. Usually in Long Beach, Indiana, but sometimes they're in Michigan City. Depends on what direction I want to walk, and I walk all the way down to where Lakeshore Drive ends in Michiana Shores, Michigan.
Really? And
I walk there and back, and it's from my house to where the road dead ends in Michiana Shores, Michigan. It's a little over a 5-mile walk. Yeah, and that's something I absolutely like to do on Saturday. After that, or before, it depends if I need to burn something off, I will get in the car and I'll head down usually to Lakeshore Coffee, which is right across from Lighthouse Place in Michigan City, and I'll get a couple of not too sweet but high calorie pastries and a big huge cup of coffee.
Place in the morning.
Yeah. Doing that and spending that time with the family and doing those things, that's heaven on earth.
Well, it's got to be nice to now also from a dining standpoint and entertainment standpoint, you got a lot more options than you ever had in Michigan City. So you're not picking from a couple of places. You've got quite an abundant array now.
Yeah, that's right. And now, by the way, now one of my regrets is I haven't gotten to dine out much lately because I've got a daughter in college, daughter in high school, and then I have an 8-month-old son, and which means I'm never ever going to get to retire. That, by the way, that age difference in all the kids, it's a great joy, and I love a guy being my age.
8-month-old is probably keeping you young.
Oh, yes. Because I tell you what, when I talk about taking that walk, part of that involves throwing him in the stroller and pushing him. That's just pure joy.
So, from our standpoint, being a good news organization, is there an abundant supply for us to go find in Michigan City in your district?
Well, it depends on what supply you're talking about. But yeah, there's a lot of good news, and I've some of it's always anecdotal, but I can tell when I get my constituent surveys back, where I send out every year, and I ask people to write comments, and people don't always believe me, but I sit and read every single one of them. It takes me a couple of months over the course of a legislative session to do, but I look at every single one. And I usually get a feeling for the number of positive comments to find out where they're at. And what I've discovered is that they're worried about a lot of things nationally. But when it comes to the area, they're much more optimistic. And that's the stuff that's what really matters to me. I mean, there's a realization that, you know what, people everywhere have problems, people everywhere have difficulties, people everywhere have things they need to get better at. But when it comes to just natural blessings, we've got a pretty good deal a lot of the time.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being here.
It's been such a pleasure. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Perspective, a little history, allowing people to get to know you a little bit more, and we'll look forward to keeping up with you in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
very much.